Hey, everybody out there in podcast world. Welcome to another exciting, enthralling, informative episode of
FNO,
that was your cue,
FNO InsureTech.
FNO InsureTech. And that is my capable and brilliant co-host.
Capable. That was the word you used. Capable. It's like you could
Capable.
say that's my
That's a
that's my
good
present
word.
co-host. He's here.
Yeah, until I can get
What
him
is he
replaced.
capable of?
That's
Speaking into a
that's
microphone?
pretty much until his replacement shows up. Lee, I would never, ever show you the podcast door. You're welcome to be on the podcast as long as it exists.
Well, thank you, Rob. That's kind. You're capable as well.
Well, I don't think that's a bad thing. Don't you? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it kind of hit me a little bit. It kind of hit me to the core, but it's not.
Did it hit you? It hit you in the wrong way.
My super smart.
Think if somebody walked up. What if somebody walked up to you on the street and said, "Hey, Lee, you know what? You're capable."
Yeah, that'd be the weirdest thing in the world. You're capable. Capable of what? Standing? Ooh.
I think it's a general phrase, isn't it?
I do not think that's the case.
Oh, you think it has to be accompanied by more information?
I think the intro to like I'm with my co-host Lee. He's a super smart guy, right? That's a Rob word, super smart. He's he's done his homework. He's also capable. Capable.
Well,
thanks, Rob.
If you're being burdened by having to listen to this conversation, then we apologize. This is really not why we're here today. But we do have a guest today. Transition. We do have a guest today.
A great guest.
Who is capable of educating us on a lot of things to do with innovation, InsureTech, and just where the heck this whole world is going. What do you think about that?
I'm excited to hear her today. I think that she is a extremely smart lady. Been in the industry a very long time and has just a wealth of knowledge to share with us and our podcast audience.
We have Karen Furtado from Strategy Meets Action on the podcast today. Karen is a leader in our industry, a thought leader, somebody who's greatly respected and called upon as a speaker, as a lecturer, as somebody who speaks at the boards of carriers, as well as any of the various enterprises inside the insurance ecosystem today. And so, for us to have somebody of her background and ability and capability is terrific, and we're thrilled to share it all with you. And I think you'll all like this podcast and where it goes. So without further ado, Lee.
I'm drumming.
A little louder. Here's our episode with Karen Furtado, a partner at Strategy Meets Action. Hey, everybody. We have a special guest on today, and I often say we have a special guest, but today I really, really mean it. That is Karen Furtado, a partner at Strategy Meets Action. And I say that because she is an authority on many things InsureTech, and we are privileged and honored to have her with us today. Thanks for joining us, Karen.
Rob, pleased to be here.
Great. Where are you joining us from today?
I am joining you from the nice warm area of southern New Hampshire, which clearly is not warm right now.
I was about to say pretty chilly up there. Isn't it?
A little chilly, but that's how it should be.
Yeah. Do you have snow on the ground and everything?
We do. As a matter of fact, last week we were gifted with a storm that should have given us about a foot, and I came home on Thursday to 2 feet of snow. So it's gorgeous.
Wow.
We're all ready for Christmas. We have our little winter blanket on.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Cool. So did I get that right that you are a partner at Strategy Meets Action?
Yes.
Why don't you give us a minute on what Strategy Meets Action is?
So, Strategy Meets Action is what we phrase is a strategic advisory firm. We have been in the insurance industry, focused on the insurance industry for the past 11 years. And we really started the company with a charter and mindset to help insurers through this transformation journey that they're all embarking on. I would say, obviously 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was more about how to start thinking differently, how to start innovating, etc. But clearly, the world has continued to change, and but our charter is still there, and our mission is really an enabler to the entire ecosystem of insurance,
So, not just carriers.
not just carriers. I do a lot of work with the vendor market, focused on helping them focus their solutions to the right purposes that will enable insurers for the transformation. So, how do they provide the products and services that are enabling the change rather than hindering the change?
That's very cool. What a cool job.
It is cool. I love
Do
the
you have
job.
any openings?
Do I have any openings?
so, so tell us how one becomes qualified to have a job like that.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I have come at this job from having a number of years, over 30 years, in the insurance industry. I previously have worked um, as one of the suppliers of vendors in the market, providing software and outsourcing services to the insurance industry for years. And so I had worked with other analysts and strategic advisors, per se, as we were rolling out our products and services. And fundamentally, I worked with obviously a number of clients.
Hmm.
And in my work with the clients, I could see how they could approach solving challenges in a different way. But as a vendor, I mean, you're really just there to do what they're bringing you in to do. I go, oh, there is a better ways to buy technology. I think you're looking actually for the wrong technology. I think you really should be looking for this. And so, using all of that experience, actually, the partner I work with, the founder of SMA, Deb Smallwood, had similar vision, and her background was really deep in the insurance industry, having worked at Liberty Mutual, chief transformation officer at ICW. I mean, she had this great background. So together, and then having Mark Brading join us, we've been able to really parlay our experiences in the insurance industry to collaboratively think about how this transformation journey is going to play out. And so I find that both our insurance company expertise, our vendor expertise, our worldwide view of how this is transforming, all of that has given us the backgrounds to really use the lenses we have to understand what the implications are of the change that's underway.
Wow, that is amazing. Really using a lot of past experience and work life and putting it to great use. I would like to build a little bit of a baseline. It looks like you've been there for about 11
Mm-hmm.
years, and I'm curious if you could kind of take us back to what were some of the problems you were trying to solve or implement 11 years ago? Because like right now we have AI, for example, that might not have existed on a scale 11 years ago. What were some of the problems that you were trying to deal with, or some of the innovations you were trying to work with?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. It does throw you back. I mean, if we look at the paradigm change of even a 10-year period of time, like what were we consumed with at that time? What do we just think were going to be the game changers? And where did the world end up? And I remember a few years ago doing this one talk track that we spoke about. And if I went back 10 years ago, if I went back 11 years ago, I will tell you, we were talking about the changes that insurance companies were going to need to be able to go through for mobility. Mobility.
Mobility.
Why that? Because 11 years ago, right, the
Right.
silly iPhones were coming out. Like
Right.
most of us still had Blackberries then. iPads out, we were still trying to figure out how do websites look
Right.
better on a iPad? We weren't developing apps per se, and we weren't having responsive type of front end experiences. We didn't see it as necessarily the tool that it's turned out to be. I mean, really, it was mobility. It was talking about a cloud and what in the world cloud is and why you might want to think that this is a good thing for you. Um, we were talking about the use of data, but I will say it was much more fundamental. It was about you need to understand what's going on in the business, and so you need more operational metrics. You need more business intelligence. So you need to really step up your game and just getting insights on what's happening with the business. And it just sounds all so matter of fact and like a staple to what we just assume is in the process. And the last big one I'd say we were talking about was social media. Like
Right.
you need to be aware of social media. It is a tool. How do you use it? I mean, I
It's going to
honestly,
be big.
when I reflect back on it now, I go, oh my God, this is what we were talking about.
Right. Right. But I mean, I remember when my kids um, told me about Facebook, and
Hmm.
that you had to have an edu address
Right.
or something like that to in order to get it once upon a time. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it's
Hmm.
all changed very quickly. And speaking of quick change, I want to level set on a term, and that is transformation. Transformation gets kicked around a ton in our industry at this time.
Hmm.
Tell us what transformation, when you talk about transformation in the space of insurance, property and casualty, what do you mean? Define that for us.
Yeah. So when I use the term, what I'm seeing is a re envisioning of how we're delivering services. So, what are our process? What do we want that customer experience to be? What do we want the internal user experience to be? And how do we use a new lens to look at the business of insurance rather than steeped in our 40, 50-year history of how we deliver services to a customer? We step back and we start to re envision what that experience is. And then we say, what are the tools? What are the technologies? What are the people needed to serve that business? And when you really step out of the paradigm and you start to really re envision what is happening and what could happen, you don't always come up with the same results as to what we have today.
So really trying to look at it through fresh eyes, if you will,
Yes, yeah.
which isn't easy, particularly if you're
It is not, and I would suggest that's why when you look at some insurance organizations, the people who maybe are heading up, quote areas of innovation or transformation, you will see that oftentimes they don't necessarily come from the insurance industry.
right.
Right.
Right? These people are really brought in to actually be that fresh eyes to accelerate because I think, as all of us, we're creatures of
Mm-hmm.
habit. Change is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if you've been doing something for a number of years, it's sort of when you tell someone to change, I don't even know what to do. What is it you're asking me to do differently? And so sometimes you really need those fresh eyes um, to help you. And that's sometimes some of the roles we help support some of these groups that start up to help them reimagine. We do some work, some scenario planning. Where we'll take an insurer, an area, a discipline area, let's say claims, and we re envision, let's say, claims in 10 years. For your business, what does what does this look like in 10 years? And when, obviously we're feeding it with what we see some of the trends
Of
are,
course.
some directional insight. What will their customers be like? What will that environment be like? Just re-envisioning what's happening out there, and then say, wow, based on all those scenarios, how do I know when I'm going to be at a point where I have to start thinking differently? And taking this lens starts to help you better prepare for the changes you want in 2020, because you have to really ask, are the priorities and the projects you're working on in 2020 serving you for yesterday's
Right.
world, or are they preparing you for tomorrow's space?
Which for companies like ours, which we're a frontline claim uh, vendor for the industry. I mean, we're busy dealing it out today. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that it takes a tremendous amount of time, energy, and focus to do a good job just in today's world, let alone
Mm-hmm.
um, finding the space and time to think about 2025, if you will.
Right,
Um,
right. How do I take that time out to really pause and think about what that is, and then challenge what you do? That takes a lot. That's why I think transformation is hard. It's hard because you have to reinvent
Right.
yourselves. And when so we see, I know our topic here is a bit on insurtech, but we say, oh, why can they move so fast? Well, they're not inhibited by the paradigms of our thinking. They don't think like we think, or they're staffed with people who maybe have been down this road before and knew they had to make a change. But when you want to take a large organization that has been designed around compliance, has really been designed to be very sequential, and supporting structures and IT that is all there to really enable that very sequential process. Our data we use tends to be very structured, so we're into that particular kind of data. Our communication for outbound and claims is very serial. It's like on the phone, or it's emails, and it's letters.
Yeah.
It's not been designed. If you step back and start looking at it, going, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, claims is about people and process.
Right.
And so, how do we stop? There was at the InsureTech Connect conference back in October. I was on this panel, and this gentleman, actually, I believe he was from Grange, made this statement. I love the statement. I use it almost every day to remind me. He says, "We are looking to drive the robot out of the people, because what we've done for the past 20 years is drive the robot into the people.
right into the people.
You will follow these processes. Well, you will do this
Right.
work. These are the manual
Yes.
tasks we have to do. You just
Yeah.
do the
Yeah. I
job."
love that.
Yeah.
I saw that in some of your information that we were studying ahead of time. That quote,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that kind of hits the nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to what you were just saying about how companies have to change their thought process, their mindset, their lenses, and really be able to focus on things that they're not associated with, future tasks perhaps, change their whole way of thinking. My question to you is, if we have an insurance company who's listening to us right now and they're interested in starting down this innovation world, can a company truly change their mindset and spin their philosophies on their head and start going down this world of innovation? Or do they have to change internally? Do they have to bring new people in? I guess what I'm asking, can people really change the way that they think?
I really do believe that they can change, and I think what we've seen as being successful. I mean, there's obviously large wholesale changes that we see sometimes happen, but I will say, if there's one thing we have learned in the past 10 years, with like even the insurtech movement, is be able to start small, fail fast, and truly learn from our experiences. And rather than seeing things as failure, can we have small incubations? And so, an example I have is I know a very large tier one company who um, said, "Wow, we've got to start really improving this claims experience. We need to make it better for our people at a minimum, and we're going to drive out some change." And they took, and I know we'll talk about AI, but they took this one little bot experience. They automated this one type of activity, inbound claim monitoring, and then it would move the data to the system. That's all it did. It took a first notice of loss type of experience, and it took the information and put it in the system. That's all it did.
Yeah.
Fundamental, you're not big wholesale change, but hey, we were using some new technology. We used to have people we deployed for this type of activity, and what happened was after a couple weeks, they noticed that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they hadn't gotten any claims, and they said, "This is wrong. What happened?" And the bot had gone down. and,
Oh
and they hadn't
goodness.
assigned
Sure.
someone to watch the bot. But
A
my
bot for
Right.
the
point of
bot.
bringing it up is a bot for a bot,
Yeah.
right? Is that we feel that people will be resistant to change. So, like, these changes have to be big. I'm suggesting this change was small, but all the employees in multiple offices saw the value it brought. They said, "Oh, thank God, we don't have to do that stupid work anymore."
Right.
And they created in 1 week 200 tasks that they could source to a bot that they previously did. So if you say, under the banner of transformation, was that starting to be transformation? I'd say
Sure.
yes. You're getting
Yeah.
employee buy-in and you're changing it. And it's not like this huge program, because I think your senior management has to be supportive of the programs. But I truly believe in the small incubations, and change will nudge us to the direction we need to be, at least for
Yeah.
internal change. I think the re-envisioning of insurance, the re-envisioning of the customer experience, that takes a different lens. It's critical. And I think that's, obviously why we're probably even talking somewhat about claims at this point, because some
Right.
insurance companies have really now taken that to task. And I think claims, quite frankly, I mean, I've covered claims for years. Claims has come out of that sleepy time, and it is the major focus, clearly, of how we transform customer experience.
Well, and I actually am currently reading a book called The Lean Startup, and it's how to really run these new programs within a current organization. And you really hit it on the head, right? A lot of times we look at innovation and change and we think we have to get it perfect. We
Mhm.
have to have it fully developed before we roll it out. And that's the only way that we will get true success. But what we're finding is exactly what you're saying is start small, be prepared to fail, and then learn from those
Mhm.
failures. And that's where we are going to see great success if we get the feedback from the customer, who in your scenario is the actual employee. Whenever they tell us what's working and what's not, you can quickly change what you're doing and really make a big
Mhm.
impact. And I think I agree 100% with you, and I think that's what organizations really have to do. They have to be able to find the problem and not
Mhm.
overthink it. I mean, isn't that right? Don't I mean, I think that a lot of times we overthink this whole world of innovation and solutions and think we have to make this big, grand, 180-degree turn, where maybe that's not the
I
case.
could not agree with you more. We almost look at it to see how we could layer more and more process and weigh down the change, rather than can we just incubate a change. And so with insurtechs, I saw a lot of incubation, and sometimes you saw, we have extremes in everything. I saw wild ideas like, "Oh my God, why are you talking to the insurance industry about some part you're going to put in the middle of an engine or something of a car," um, to, "Wow, that was so simple. I can't believe we didn't think to do that before." um, and so I think we've really come through a maturity and an acceptance that, hey, there was there was real value to what many of these companies were doing. So we've started to see, what I'll call, the winners in the market, a real application of it. But I think insurers also saw that they could change and adjust. And again, to me, this becomes more the enabling of an ecosystem than just one group or another. It's not the insurer techs versus the insurers. It's truly how we all can benefit from the changes going on. But on that, I heard some company, in their innovation program, they spent like $1 million on trying this one thing. And I looked and I go, you spent what? $1 million. I go, couldn't you have spent like $1,000 to know like that was not going to give you what you want? Like, I go, you made it too big. You made it too hairy. You made it expectations probably were never going to be
Right.
met. And you need to stop yourselves if you're trying to head down that
Right.
path because you now know that will not breed. But to your point, is we expect perfection, we make it big, we layer it in process. We know how to
Sure.
do that
More
really
more
well.
simple transformation than
Yes.
necessarily swinging for the fences. I want before we discuss InsurTech in particular, I want to touch on one more thing, kind of on that we're seeing on the carrier side, and I'm sure you are, and that's the innovation department or the innovation area or the innovation people at carriers. Um, can you talk about that for a minute? I mean, the role that you see them play now, and the role that they'll be playing going into the future, and how effectively that's working in your view.
Yeah, I mean, we just had Nationwide speak at our summit last week, and just what an amazing story they had. They had so many initiatives underway, and these innovation groups have really morphed. Where they were 5 or 6 years ago, it was more how do we try some of this newer
Right.
technology and see what it can do. So the big experiment but insurers have really, if I look at a nationwide, they just rolled out their new digital brand, Spire. Um, we have Liberty Mutual, who has an entire innovation lab. Allstate, one of the first ones when I went to, listen to a conference many years ago, they were the first ones I ever heard about having an innovation lab, a place you go. And then we all learned we didn't have to go to just a place. And so I think what these companies have really started to be able to do that's different is they've taken some of the innovative ideas and we've now started to operationalize it. I mean, Liberty Mutual, they inject innovation into a number
Mm-hmm.
of their projects so that it's not just done on the side. And I think that was something we learned is that having innovation teams are great. We get a lot of new learnings from them, but they're not necessarily integrated with our operation. And so, how do we get the best of both of this? How do we get innovation, but we get it within our organization? We incubate that which we need to outside of the main body of the organization, but we've got to be able to integrate it because without the integration,
Yeah,
it's only going to bring so
it's
much
like
value.
getting a cool toy at Christmas, which is just around the corner from our recording today. That you can't
Hmm.
that looks really cool, but you don't know how to use. I mean, that and I agree with you. I think that innovation departments are critical in the future, um, as far as
Hmm.
the ones that can create implementation and change in the organization. We had a really interesting interview with the innovation officer at Grange Insurance, which of course is a smaller insurer. Um,
Hmm.
but that's a lot of what he talked about how they effectively implement into the organization, effectively that change happens, not just that they discover something that's wonderful, or that's really cool. I mean, like we were talking offline before we started today, we mentioned AI, and I mean, we all know AI is important for the future, but only if you can use it, right?
Hmm.
I would argue that a implementation department is equally as important as the innovation department. In fact, we work with a carrier now who really has both. They have the innovation department, and then they have a whole product team who is in charge of implementing it, testing it, and really putting it out to market. And they have to be connected, right? They have to be able to really understand each other's philosophies and theories and be able to test them. It's very,
Yeah,
very
I,
important.
we in our research we've looked at how companies are set up for innovation. If they run innovation groups, do they have it integrated with the business? And I have to say
Sure.
we've seen so many different models um, in the market, and each being successful. One carrier I see, they started the innovation really just from the claims area, and they had some really great successes. What was the biggest challenge? Trying to drive that across the enterprise, trying to get underwriting to see the same value and success that maybe they saw in claims. I mean, but that was the way that company approached it. Others are more, let's keep it separate from the body. We'll figure out how to integrate it. Others are, all right, we need new product and we need new approaches to the market. We need to do that in a different area. Ultimately, I agree. It all has to somehow come together. But if you make it so big to start with, you'll never get the learnings because you'll weigh it down. So it's how do we have the balance of free thinking, free learning? Because I think nowadays more than ever before, and I know I swear if I was on your podcast again next year, I'd be saying the same thing. Oh my God, it's things not changing quickly, like the speed, the pace is incredible compared to 10 years ago. And it is not slowing down. It's not like insurance is generating this change. The world is changing. The digital world all around us changes.
Is that what it is? That's a great point, and I was going to I was going to change subjects here, but you're on a great point. Is it going fast in the PNC world, and is it just because the world is going fast? Because we find, and I'm sure you do, as somebody as a veteran of this industry who's been around it a long time, the pace of what we see today in change versus historically is crazy. It's moving so fast. Things are happening quickly. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I think we often all will look at this just from our own personal life and experiences, clearly outside of our industry roles. Oh my gosh, right? What my car can do now compared to what my car did. I mean, I bought a car in 2014. It was the 2015 model. I bought another car this year. This car stops when it feels like it needs to stop. It keeps me in a lane. It gives me warnings. It drives virtually itself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
compared to the car 5 years ago.
Right.
So, do I lease cars now? I lease them more. And people ask me why. I go, because in 3 years, this car is going to like do 10
Obsolete.
times more than it does today. And
Mm-hmm.
so, when I take that, with what's changing, here's another change. Another change, if we look commercial lines, because we speak a lot about personal lines, commercial. If I go to a construction site, like I just had some bridges being built near my house recently. The people are not laying the rebar anymore. We have robots that lay rebar. We have technology that does that. If I'm on a construction site, I am going to see autonomous, I'm going to see robotic bricklaying. I'm not going to see people laying bricks. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you start thinking about the world changes, when we start thinking about how computing changes, the idea of cloud is ubiquitous now. We almost assume everything is in the cloud. It's not even
Right.
a question compared to 5 years ago.
Right.
When we're sold the idea that we have all these virtual assistants, I have my banking virtual assistant that is now giving me my budget numbers and what my run rate is. I had Excel spreadsheets I used to have to use to create this information. I mean, the AI is ubiquitous. It's installed in absolutely every experience that we have today personally. And so to me, it's more the world has accelerated its adoptions of technology. Insurance is along for the ride.
Along
And
for the ride.
if we're all here, both from commercial businesses and personal experiences, and we are having these experiences, these all push their way into the insurance paradigm. They change what we insure. They change the exposures we insure. If I'm bricklaying and I don't have people doing it, you know what? My work comp exposure is going down because I don't
Mm.
have as many people on site
Right.
anymore.
Right.
I'm going to call the manufacturer, hey, your bricklayer isn't working anymore. And I'm really talking about product
Hmm.
liability and the function of the tool, not a person. And, as AI is now more ubiquitous with everything we're doing, we're sort of expecting, honestly, if I call an insurance company, I expect they have technology that knows my phone number and knows it's me.
Right.
Why
Right.
are
They
you
should. Right.
asking me 20 questions? Do you not have the information available to yourself right away?
Hmm.
I just expect that.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
that all the new technology that is in the world is coming to insurance, and we get to take advantage of it.
Right. Right. It may be kicking and screaming, but nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't say we quietly went along and easily adapted to it, but
Right. Let's talk about InsurTech specifically. You have a tremendous reach into InsurTech and are in a great, wonderful perch that you get to play in the InsurTech toy store all the time. For something that
Mhm.
I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago wasn't even a word, it's now pervasive and everywhere on the insurance landscape. Talk for a few minutes about what you think about insurtech. Where's insurtech going? Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think InsurTech has now really created itself as being, the incubation or the new idea of the money coming to insurance. I mean, there is such incredible capital that comes to insurance now. Sort of like the fintech movement, we certainly have the InsurTech movement. Um, and whether it's been as an MGA, whether it's as a technology, whether it's as an insurer, they have had transformational impacts on our industry. I think we were all, when they were first coming out, we were somewhat hesitant to what their impact really could be. And so it was a lot about a conversation about IoT or some other devices and things like that. But nowadays, we've reached now a real maturity and impact that these companies are having, for example,
Hmm.
on customer experience. They've rethought how experience should work. If I look at a company like an example like a High Marley, just if you think about the bot and you think about the first notice of loss process and you think about AI, it's very natural that when you report an accident, hey, it's great. Yeah, I'm going to text now with my claim number and who my adjuster is. And the bot asks, hey, by the way, do you have any pictures you want to send in? Oh, yeah, I got them right on my
Right.
phone because my phone isn't really a phone anymore. It's
Hmm.
this digital device with me everywhere. I can take a 4-day process
Hmm.
to be within 1 hour. I mean, that's
Hmm.
transformational. It's like, oh my God, that was so simple. But it wasn't simple. Someone had to come up with this idea. We had to develop these technologies and we had to make sure they fell into the compliance realm we have. But, whether we're talking aerial imaging or we're talking chatbotting, I mean, there is now, a nice, we track over 1,500 insurtechs. And I have to say, it is
Is it?
leveling off. There's fewer new, the pace, rapid pace of
Hmm.
startup is not as significant as it was. uh, Newer ideas are coming, but they're sort of thought through in context to insurance. And definitely we're talking fourth and fifth rounds of funding now. There are definitely companies that are really, I'm going to
Right.
say in
Winners.
air
Winners.
quotes, making it here.
So let's talk about AI for a minute. And as a broad category within insurtech, is that the hottest area that you guys are seeing?
I think in the past year, It absolutely has become the hottest area, and here's how I gauge that. In the Insure Tech Connect conference in uh, Las Vegas this past September. And you walk into that hall, and I'm saying it broadly now because over 7,500 of my friends in
Yeah,
insurance
right.
were all at the InsureTech conference. And you
Right.
walk into the hall, you would be hard pressed to go to any exhibitor that was not talking about AI.
Right.
They might be talking about conversation platforms, but they're also talking about AI, whether it's robotic process automation, natural language processing, whether it's machine learning. Fundamentally, when I look at the landscape, all we're talking about AI. If I look at Cape Analytics, right, and we're talking about aerial imaging, they're using AI. So I started
Hmm.
to look at what's that common denominator. I mean, some were, I'll call widgety. Yeah, IoT, um, maybe not as much AI centric. A sensor is a sensor. It's
Right.
it might use AI how to communicate out the information, but it's tracking particular information. But over 90% have got to be centered on some form of AI at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. AI is all the rage right now. I was thinking back to 2 years ago, even whenever we started this podcast, it was all about blockchain. We
Mm,
talked every episode blockchain because that's what ITC had a lot of blockchain. And I remember we asked about it. I feel as though AI is going to really be the subject of conversation into this next year because I feel like we're just on the verge of it. In fact, Rob, you had a stat the other day you were telling me about how it's one of the fastest growing jobs out there
Yeah,
based on
yeah. I
LinkedIn
saw
is
the
is
number
AI
one in
specialist. Wasn't
demand
that right?
job going forward is AI specialist, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to be a hot topic. And that's really the biggest area of opportunity that I see, right? We're not really looking at how to rebuild a website on an iPhone anymore as we were 10 years ago.
mhm.
Uh, but that lasted a little while. And I think AI will as well.
I agree. I thought I have read, I think this is probably it's probably true because of the time period
Agreed.
that those that are born today, by the time they get into the workforce, those jobs aren't even defined yet. As a matter of fact, I thought I heard that last week that said people graduating from high school now, the jobs they will get when they leave college don't exist right now.
Agreed.
Wow.
Agreed.
I go,
That's
wow,
that's
that's four
intense.
years. That's four
Agreed.
years. Like, oh my God, what are people going to be doing? Like, and
Yeah.
that realization that the jobs are changing, the workforce has to change. The idea of doing the same thing you've done for 100 years. I mean, if you've done that job, you might want to think about how you rethink your job because it's going to
Mm.
change. So I agree. I think a
Hmm.
data we've needed data scientists for a number of years. We've talked about that. We've talked about the schools needing to produce more people educated in the field of data science, but I think we're now upping it to the new. I don't know. I'm sort of now an Avengers person. I didn't watch a lot of the shows, but
Uh-huh.
I've watched the last couple, and I go,
No,
that doesn't seem so far fetched
no.
anymore.
Yeah.
I,
But isn't it
I
funny?
want that
Things like that
augmented
are.
reality. I want forget my
Yeah.
screens. I just want to
Hmm.
bring screens in and throw them out with my hands, and I'm all ready for it.
I think it's so neat how movies can dictate the future, right? People's dreams can come out in this imagination world of a movie. And now we look at it and we have technology and resources where some of that stuff can come true. They can see something, spark an idea, and boom, stuff is created. Is future is so fast.
At our summit last week, AM Best spoke, and they were speaking about 2050. But the opening was all about these
Yeah.
clips, and I love using the Jetsons as an example. And so they would have a Jetson clip. So they had the spaceship, and then they had the drone. They had the communication devices, and then they had the wrist phone. I mean, it was amazing how they took what happened in the past and projected out maybe 5, 10 years how it would transform to be like the Jetsons. And I go, oh, I want to meet those creative people like from the
Yeah.
1960s
Yeah.
that had the
Yes.
foresight to think that this was even something possible. I mean, I
Right.
can sort of keep up with it once the idea is here, but wow, that to me is far reaching.
Yeah. That's one of the cool things about the insurtech world is we get to hang out with some really, really smart people
Mm-hmm.
and some futurists, if you will. In fact, we had Mark
Hmm.
Breeding on, and he called himself a futurist. So, um,
Mark does, Mark and I do some work at times with the scenario planning, and he goes there. I call him the future view, and then I'm the pragmatic person. So he will say, "All right, here's 10 years," and then I say, "All right, in 3 to 5, here's what that's going to be."
well,
So we work all well as a bridge to our thinking.
well, but it's kind of like gets back to what we were talking about earlier. It really does kind of take two, one person
Hmm.
to dream it and another person to use it. Um,
Right.
uh, and I think we have example of that in many companies. But before we go today, I want to talk with you just real quickly about conferences. And you just had your guys' big summit, which is a big
Mhm.
deal in New York City, and of course we're looking forward to getting our invitation for next year. But that's beside the point. That's not really why I brought
Right.
it up.
Right.
That has nothing to do with it.
Right.
But uh, how was your conference? You there's a lot going on there, yeah.
Oh, I thought the conference this year, every year we sit back and say, oh my God, how are we going to put this on? How are we going to get the right speakers? How do we up the game? And then it all comes together. This year we worked with the institutes and putting it on in New York City. It was a big change for us. Boston and New York.
Uh
We
huh.
had over 32 speakers, 16 different sessions. We started at 8:30. We finished promptly at 5 o'clock. So it was an absolute fire hose of fabulous speakers. I was like, it was amazing. We have an innovation or a transformation and action award program that Mark headed up this year. We had 7 winners. These people came and spoke about what their transformation stories were, whether it be about customer experience or internal transformation, etc. Nationwide, won the enterprise-wide transformation. I mean, usually we're looking for a company out there that's really changing the game. But what I loved, it was so collegial. We had the greatest number of insurers there sharing than we've ever had before. We have a vendor community that typically are our clients and sponsors that interact with that community. It's the power of the two together that is transformational. It's not just because of story X or Y. And so what was really great about it is the pace was that made you stay engaged. It jogged you. It was like a 10-minute session, a
Right.
20-minute
Well,
session. Fabulous speakers. And it really raised everyone's awareness of what
yeah. I
was
mean,
happening
you
in
you
the
didn't
industry.
mention all this happened in a day. This isn't a multi-day event,
It
right?
was
It's one day.
8:30 to 5 o'clock.
I don't know how you do that. 30 some speakers in a day. That's a lot.
Well, you have to make you have to everyone has to claim their own conference speed, and for us it's how much information can we give so that you can take one or two
Uh-huh.
things back to what you do every day and make a
The
change.
I just want to highlight one other thing. I know we're running a little over, and I appreciate you sticking with us. Um, and that is what you said about sharing. That and you've been in the industry a long time. I've been in the industry a long time. That generally speaking, insurers have been very, very protective and quiet, and transparency hasn't been something that they're comfortable with. But boy, has that changed, or is that in the process of changing? Don't you see that 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 they're sharing and talking among each other and not being so secretive.
Oh, I totally agree. As a matter of fact, the next day we ran a workshop that was for insurers. And it was like, what are your big ahas or what are your oh my goshes from the summit? And they were so collaborative. they were saying, I love that story. Tell me more about how did you do the hackathon, or how did you start thinking about incubating that one bot to make that change? What do you think is that? And they said, we want to keep this forum going. And I think that's because we have these outside in voices. It's this blending of people who don't look at everything the same way. And there's an energy about that, and a hunger to want to do it differently. And I think that has really started to, because I think everyone feels they're in the same boat. We know we have to make a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
change.
yeah.
How do we get it
We're all
going?
kind of in the same, we're in this together. Last question, and that's on conferences. I know that you
Yeah.
travel extensively and you attend a lot of conferences. Can you share with our audience some conferences that you really like?
Yeah, the conference scene has so shifted and changed over the years. I mean, conferences get to their peak, and then there's suddenly another conference that comes in behind it. And so, some of the conferences that I've been to or participated in over the past year, that, and to me, are starting to really highlight and profile these new stories in the market and learning. So, the uh, Dig-In conference in May is, to me, a really great collaborative conference. ITC, the Insurance Tech Connect conference, that to me is a great exchange, eye opening. If you want to see what's really happening out there, it's a great place. Once and done, you can go and see, a lot of those stories. We just participated in the Digital Insure. InsureFest exchange. It's completely a virtual conference. A lot of people attend that. So, from the comfort of your own home,
Hmm.
you can be attending a conference. And I think, I'm probably old school. I think there's things we can do using these mediums, you know, uh, video casting, conferencing virtually. There's something about the human connection, though, that I think is so important for networking and collaboration. And, I think some of these conferences have been a great way
Hmm.
to keep
Hmm.
that collaboration going.
It
Oh, and the
goes without
SMA
saying.
Summit, of course.
Glad you got that plug in. Listen, we have
Mhm.
been just so our audience knows, we have been trying to have Karen on for some time, and she's just so busy, and so we're so grateful that you made time. But you know what? We haven't even covered all the topics that I wanted to cover with you. I mean, I really wanted to talk about customer experience. So you
Yeah,
have
we'll
to.
have to do it again.
That's right. We'll have to. Let's look at 2021. I think
Okay.
it takes about that long to get on your calendar. So, um, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
We
Karen.
we really enjoyed having you. And would you come back and join us again sometime?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Sure. And stay warm out there.
I will.
Re-envisioning of insurance. What'd you think about that?
I thought that was great. I
I thought that was great.
really, I enjoyed speaking with her. I thought it was just a great time to really think about where we've been as an industry, what was important, and then what's important now. But then to think forward and say, what is important now? And are we preparing for our futures? Because what's important
Right.
in 10 years from now won't be the same. So, how are we building the processes and building our workflows to actually adapt to the future needs?
Yeah, I thought it was a great question that you asked her. And I never like to admit that you asked a great question, of course.
We all know
But
that.
the great question, you asked a great question about, where were we 10 years ago? What were we talking about? And I think that's a great kind of marker, right, to show how how much things have changed in the last 10 years. And of course, most especially in the last 5, wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. But if you go back to 10 years, you think about how important and how necessary that change was, because you're talking iPhone and BlackBerry, you're talking about a small computer in everyone's pocket. That's a huge change. Right
Mhm.
now, everybody already has the technology in their hands. Now we're just trying to say, well, how can you use that technology that's been here for 10 years and make it better? So it's not like we're asking clients or insureds to actually hold on to more technology. We're asking them to be smarter in how they use it. It's just a whole nother set of problems. But it just shows you in 10 years, we'll be dealing with more problems that we look back now and think, oh, that's interesting.
I I loved what she said, that insurance, the industry, insurance, the the product is along for the ride. Why are we seeing this pace of change happening, quickening and going so quickly now? And her premise was all society, right? All the world is moving very fast. Technology is pulling everything, pushing everything forward so quickly that insurance is along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree with that. You think about why we do everything in innovation, and it's always driven by the customer's needs and their wants. And so, insurance is a cog in the wheel, I guess. Right? It's a piece of the pie that is going, but really, it's society that says, "Customer, you need things faster. You need it cheaper. You need it better." And we're going with what society says, and it's been set up by the iPhone, by companies like Netflix and Amazon, and even local companies. They're the ones who have set this. We are
Right,
along for the ride.
right. And we and many others have talked about how, the way that Amazon has changed where the bar is. And I know that we're recording this just before Christmas, so many of us have been probably dealing with and buying from Amazon over the last month, in particular. And they just keep raising the bar higher and higher and higher. And so to be in any kind of enterprise and not be measured by them is impossible. You're going to be measured by that bar. And so you have to move your bar up.
You are. I started looking at emails I received today, and there are these boutique companies, there are these large companies, and you're getting such personalized advertisements that you didn't get 2 years ago. You might search something online, you open up an Instagram, and boom, there's this beautiful ad for whatever it is you were just looking for, or a like kind product. It's just another example of how society is pushing us to change the way we market. Therefore, insurance will have to adapt to the way that they market
Mhm.
their product. It's the same with our customer expectations. Everything is driven around the customer. We are eventually going to be used to beautiful ads that are specialized to us for us to make our decisions. It's a fascinating turn in the world of where we all live.
Well, we thank Karen so much for being with us today. As we mentioned on the podcast, we kind of had to get in line and wait for her because she's a very, very busy person and in demand. And we are so grateful that she gave us some time to visit with us today. And we'll look forward to having her on again. And this is not the last podcast that we'll record before Christmas, but it's not too early to say happy holiday, everybody. And we appreciate the gift that you've given us this year. And that's the gift of listening to our podcast and coming along on this journey with us, which we're really grateful for, aren't we, Lee?
I'm
Am I right?
extremely grateful. Yes.
I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
So, with that said, we'll say what we always say at the end of every podcast.
Goodbye, everybody.